The fantasy baseball playoff. The Orioles have called up two top prospects that could potentially have an impact on your fantasy baseball team in Samuel Basallo and Dylan Beavers. And then we have pitchers like Hurston Waldrip and Jacob Lopez that have been performing out of their minds lately. Those names and more on this action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here as always with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ahne. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, and if you are watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It's going to subscribe you to the channel and give you notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on the audio side of things, once again, please make sure you subscribe. And if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you do that for us as well. And lastly, and what's going to help you win your fantasy baseball league is joining Matt and I on the Insider's Track. When everyone else is slipping in their fantasy baseball league because they're focused on football, join Matt and I on the Insider's Track. It's going to be your cheat code to help you win your fantasy baseball league. When we do these waiver wire episodes, we're going to give you an instant text messaging alert to your phone, ranking these guys, telling you how to prioritize them when you're picking them up. And we do instant prospect note of qualification. So when Basallo got called up, you got that going right to your phone. So join us on the Insider Track, guys. It's going to help you win your league. And join us once again. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. And Matt, two top call-ups here, two prospects, big names. We got a bunch of pitchers. Going into the playoffs, you want to be locked in, and we got 10 names that you're going to want to add to your teams. So, Matt, why don't you take us away?
Yep. Tis the season to have September call-ups. We are now entering in the window where control is no longer a factor, and they have achieved it. So expect more and more calls to be in there. I also want to thank Dom for holding it down while I was out of the country. Sorry, I haven't been here, guys. Apparently the hotel I was staying in doesn't believe in Wi-Fi. So therefore I could not join. So it was fun. North 3-prong, outlets. So that was great too. But yeah, let's get into it. So I guess we can't bury the lead here. Let's open up with Samuel Basallo of the Baltimore Orioles. Sorry, I butchered his name there first time. But Samuel Basallo is a top 10 prospect overall in baseball, and he's amazing. Has catcher and first base eligibility, which is awesome little combo. Wild part is for the Orioles, he's just going to play DH, so you're getting that cheat code for a guy that's going to have a high upside. He's 14% owned right now, and I think he needs to be added everywhere. So let's go over who Basallo is if you're not familiar, who this top-end prospect is. Again, first and catcher eligibility, pretty much replacing him in your catcher's position the second you add him because the power is going to be monstrous. Look, he has a 30 out of 45 hit tool, 55 out of 70 game power, 70 out of 80 raw power, 40 out of 40 speed, and he is a good fielder. So if he can get behind the mound, not behind the mound, behind home plate, and start catching himself, he's going to do just fine. Now, all we need him to do for Yahoo is 5 games in the bigs at right. I think it's 5 games at the bigs, and he gets catcher eligibility next year. 15 on CBS and other platforms. So if he can just catch 15 games this season, he's going to keep it for next year versus getting moved over to first base or just DH. So let's keep an eye out on that because that's going to change his value, how valuable he is next year. But let's look at the what's on the horizon here. So Basallo, before getting called up, obviously in AAA, was just absolutely crushing it in the minors, right? 270 at bats, 49 runs, 17 doubles, 23 bombs, 67 ribs, 44 walks, 76 strikeouts, 270 batting average, a 377 OBP, a slug of 589, an OPS of 966. So long story short, he's absolutely crushing it. And how much of this is actually going to cross over into the bigs? Well, we clearly see that he has, some form of plate discipline because you see the walks and strikeouts and how they compare. So I think that he's going to be able to handle himself. You look at the power, and the power in that pace is just absolutely bonkers. So I think that, that we're going to see some power. And lastly, he also crushes for the doubles. So we're just going to see a lot of him. And I think that, if he could get off to a hot start, he's going to be a significant instant impact to your team and be the difference of winning you a playoff, winning you a championship and, just making the playoffs. So I'm definitely adding him everywhere. I'm going to sneak him in at catcher because you're not going to get the production from anybody unless you're dealing with like a Salvador Perez these days, who's been absolutely annihilating the ball. Like Basallo Basallo, I keep butchering that name. I think just can really thrust you. Now, here's the thing too. So say he doesn't start off to a hot start. What are you going to do, right? Do you have time to be patient? The word is possibly. So if I am a first seed team that is going to have a bye and has locked up the playoff spot, yeah, I'm going to be patient. If I am fighting for a champion, trying to get into the playoffs and I'm fighting for that slot, I may not have the ability to be patient if he doesn't get started right out the gate. So I'm going to add him, but then we might have to circle back if your depth isn't there to hold on. But ultimately, right now, Basallo looks like all the arrows are pointing up, but we all know how prospects start. You look at the Caglionis, you look at, the Nick Kurtz, you look at any prospect that's come up this year. It took them like a couple weeks to get adjusted, and then they just started showing off who they were in the minors. So patience may be a virtue with this guy, but at the same time, there's also that spot where he could just be an instant impact. I'm excited to see. Going to be a high impact player coming up.
Yeah, Matt, great take on Basallo there. I'm going to take a little bit more of a passive approach with Basallo. I'm not going to say he's a must add everywhere. Definitely 2 catcher leagues, definitely AL onlys, 15s, deep 12s for sure. When you start talking about shallower than that, though, there's definitely been 10 strong catchers this year. Catcher, we've kind of been blessed. The Hunter Goodmans, the Ivan Herreras, the Augustine Ramirez's, Shea Langoliers having a career year, Cal Raleigh having a career year. The Contreras brothers doing their thing. Matt, you talked about Salvador Perez. I think I just named 10 without even really trying there. And then even Drake Baldwin, another guy in Atlanta, having another great season at catcher. Probably wouldn't drop any of those guys for Basallo straight up. But if you have the room on your roster and you have a dead bat right now, Basallo is definitely worth looking into. I'm not dropping anybody super interesting for Basallo at the moment, but Matt talked about the power. I don't know how much the batting average is going to play in the bigs, hitting 270 this year. But definitely a lot of power. Lineup looks a little bit better with Basallo and, the guy we're going to be talking about next over there now. So as Matt mentioned, 14% owned on Yahoo for Basallo, catcher and first base, number 8 prospect in all of baseball for good reason. Kind of almost reminds me of the Francisco Alvarez, from a few years ago. It was 2 or 3 years ago when he was a top 5 prospect, got called up. A lot of power in the bat. I think that's what's going to play up first. So, go ahead, Matt. Jump in. Yeah, of course.
So, here's the deal, right? There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 actual catchers that have been a daily contributor, somebody that's consistent. Outside of that, then you start falling on names of like Langoliers, Wong, Ohapi, Jeffries, Real Muto, guys that have either just been up and down or guys that you've dropped and picked up for other guys that are hot. So like Basallo could just be that guy that takes it to the end of the season. I think if you're starting them week in and week out, whether you're in a single catcher or as your 2 catcher leagues, which again, you pointed out was the more valuable front, but Basallo could be the push here. So I would definitely look to start him over those guys as long as they're not hot.
I think I named about 12 catchers there. I don't think I'd drop any of the guys I just named. I'm not going to ramble them all off again, but any of the guys I named, I'd probably hang in there with for a little bit and see where Basallo goes. I'll say this with a lot of leagues, Matt, that we even play. We play in a lot of very competitive leagues. I didn't see the rush to jump out there and add Basallo like we've seen with a lot of other guys. I think he'll still be out there in some of the shallow leagues. Like I said, if you're playing 2 catcher, AL only, deeper leagues, yes, go out and snag him now. But, if you've had a decent catcher, if you have the Herreras, Goodmans, Augustine Ramirez, even guys who, have been pretty good this year, I hold on to them rather than going out there and dropping a name like that for Basallo, who we haven't really seen yet in the big. Let's keep things pushing. We spent a lot of time here on him. Actually, before we sneak in and talk about his new teammate up in the bigs, and then we got a couple of Cincinnati Reds and a bunch of pitchers. Quick ad break for you guys. Matt, I think you're muted, brother.
Did it again. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you've got your eye on a big name quarterback or a breakout running back, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the game. Prize Picks is simply to a simple way to play. Just pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if your picks are right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. I've used Prize Picks for a few seasons now, and I love it. It's simple. I can get a lineup in before a cup of coffee finishes brewing. The flex play option is a total game changer, and even when when one of your picks misses, you can still double down your money. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Locked On MLB to get $50 in a lineup after you play your $5 lineup. The code is MLB Locked On MLB to get $50 in your lineup after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, run your game, and I got a little something for you since you're going to starting off for the first time. Honestly, look, I'm always doing a plus on the more for stolen bases on Ellie De La Cruz. Always a plus on the home runs for Kirk, and quite honestly, I'm also just doing it for a hit for pretty much also Kirk, and I'm just going to roll through. So those are 3 picks that I think locked in solid. You can not only turn that $5 into money, but also get that $50 bonus. Prize Picks, run your game. And if you want a little bit more than what we offer in this 30-minute podcast, make sure to check us out on the Insider Track. We're not only going to be able to get ahead of your league with all these September call-ups, but also be able to ask us questions, start sit matchups, things like that. Also get, rankings on today's show, for instance, and more. Check us out. Links in the description below. But let's start moving a little bit faster. There was a lot on Basallo. Dom, take it away.
Yeah, let's talk about his teammate. Let's talk about Dylan Beavers, who also got the call over the weekend. And Beavers had been a monster in AAA before getting the call. 94 games down there for Beavers, 304 batting average, 78 runs, 14 doubles, 2 triples, 18 homers, 51 RBIs, 68 walks to 76 strikeouts, and 23 steals for the young Dylan Beavers. He's played 2 games over the weekend here, went 1 for 5 in his first game, went 1 for 4 in the second game with 2 runs, hit 6th and 8th in that Baltimore lineup, which is looking a lot better now. You get those 2 young prospects in there. Beavers, is not going to be, once again, not going to be for everybody. He's 5% owned on Yahoo, those 5 outfielder leagues, AL onlys, 15s. Deep 12s watch list him for now, just because he had been so productive in the minors this year. He was flying up, prospect lists everywhere. Didn't crack the top 100 in the most recent update because of the call up here, but very well might have if he stayed down in the minors for a little bit longer. I like Dylan Beavers, but for time purposes here, more of a deep league play than anything else. Has a little bit of power, a little bit of speed. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, so he's a big baseball boy. I like what he could potentially go into in the future. Baltimore, we thought they were going to be really good at prospects, but they've been so we'll see with Beavers.
Yeah, I like the speed batting average combo, just that based off of that, especially in those, solid roto leagues. He's going to play up, and he's going to, not hurt you on a daily basis as long as he can keep that plate discipline up and carry over to the big. So Beavers is somebody that's great, and if you can pop in some power, that's all great as well. But let's move on. Let's talk about Noelvi Marte, third baseman for the Cincinnati Reds. And Marte unfortunately got pinged for, PEDs as a first half of the season, and obviously wasn't able to show off what he could do, but since returning off his suspension, he's been really good. 192 at bats, 28 runs, 13 doubles, a triple, 9 bombs, 37 ribs, 7 stolen bases, 8 walks to 39 strikeouts, which is unfortunate, which hurts his value in points leagues, but a 292 batting average, a 328 OBP, a slug of 510, an OPS of 839, like looking real stout. And I love it. Straight up. Marte is somebody that I was targeting the second he was even coming close. We actually said to, pretty much stash him as he gets closer to, being eligible to return. And he's been crushing it, especially over the last week. 5 runs, 2 bombs, 8 ribs, batting 385. Really just putting a hammer to the ball and just playing his part. I think that, he probably didn't even need the the PEDs in all honesty, because he just crushes the ball. Nearly 90 mile per hour exit velocity. The expected slug is a 459. Expecting batting average is a little bit lower, but still not atrocious at a 270. He's looking real good. And you know what? The more he shows out there, the more he does. The 23-year-old, I just think that he's going to be more and more, valuable. And he also has outfield eligibility. I'm all about it. Add him now, and just, ownership as well. He is still 28% owned, so out there, and a little over 70% of league. So I would add him immediately.
Matt, that was a spot-on take about Noelvi Marte. I think he's going to be somebody I'm going to be very excited to draft next year. Still only 23 years old himself, so we talked about those two young Baltimore players. Noelvi Marte is still very young himself. Matt, good take. So I'm just going to keep things pushing here. Add Noelvi Marte, one of my favorite guys to add, heading into the playoffs here. Let's talk about Miguel Andujar, his teammate. Andujar, former New York Yankee. I got to think for Miguel Andujar, just a great player, but also has that third and outfield eligibility on Yahoo. He's been on a tear over there in Cincinnati, especially over the last couple of weeks. He has 3 home runs since August 10th. Bunch of RBIs, bunch of multi-hit games, even on the season, 311 batting average across 72 games with 30 runs, 9 homers, 36 RBIs, and a steal. He's 32% owned on Yahoo. I like what he brings to the table when healthy. Andujar can get the job done throughout his whole career. He's been, banged up a lot. So ride the wave. He's been batting cleanup very consistently in this Reds lineup. So, with Noelvi, Ellie De La Cruz, the rest of them boys over there. I like what Andujar brings to the table. So, nice little ad here. Juice the orange while you can, while he's on the field and healthy.
Yeah, I'm definitely never mad at, riding the hot hand, and Andujar, at least, I've seen him, go on these hot streaks. So I kind of want a piece of that ultimately at the end of the day. But again, zero leash, right? Like the second he cools off, or, he's not pretty much hitting it home, that is where, we could probably hit the eject button and move on. But let's move on. Like, just like I said, to move on from Andujar, move on to our next guy here, Joey Ortiz of the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm sorry. 16% owned, playing third and shortstop eligibility. He is having a great week. 6 runs, 5 ribs, a stolen base, batting .417 even over the last 2. 11 runs, 9 ribs, 2 stolen bases, batting .364. Guy's not really known for power, and honestly not really known for much, because, even the season numbers aren't really impressive. But what I can say is, at least he's doing things and contributing. One of my key rules is batting average off the waiver wires is something that's always something that's worth desiring. And the fact that he's putting in counting stats and putting him in a position to contribute, definitely want to ride that hot hand, but that's really about it. No leash, no nothing. Obviously, I think a lower priority ad on this episode, but a guy that's definitely worth mentioning because he's contributing and putting up really good batting average that can help you thrust yourself to win a week.
Yeah, Matt, good call on Ortiz, another former Baltimore, Oriole prospect. He wasn't a high-end prospect when he was with Baltimore, but he was interesting. People talked about him here and there, starting to show off, some of those tools, a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed. Listen, we talked about how good Milwaukee's been, man. Milwaukee's been the best team in baseball of late, so you kind of almost want to get a little piece of that lineup where you can. Third and short eligibility on Yahoo, only 16% owned for a guy like Joey Ortiz. Ride the hot hand while you can. But before we move into the pitching half of this episode and talk about names like Haruston Waldrep, Jacob Lopez, Cade Cavalli, those names and more coming up next. And all right, guys, August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race, crown your champion in August, or parlay your division winner dark horses. And you know what, guys? I'll tell you this, a lot of good bets going on out there, on FanDuel. Somebody I personally love. I like Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen's going to have a big year over there in Buffalo, so I'd bet his touchdowns. And then, another guy, Derrick Henry, monster year. I think he's going to, potentially have some chance to break some records this year. He's heading into that all-time territory as far as rushing yards. So take some rushing yards bets for Derrick Henry. Guys, to do all of that, visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your future bets now because futures is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. And all right, Matt, any chance you got these any of these pitchers queued up over there, my brother? If you do, you're muted, and I don't know.
I do. I apologize. Yeah, I'm at it again. All right. I got Hurston Waldrep ready and rocking here. 38% owned. I had a feeling you weren't going to be ready to rock, but he's been crushing in his last 3 outings and is, killing it through 17 innings on the season. Three wins, 17 Ks, a 1.02 ERA, and a .79 WHIP. Looking great. I honestly, I'm intrigued. I definitely want him on my team at this point. The fact that he's only 38% owned tells me that, you know what, you're ahead of the curve if you got him early, but he's still available in 62% of leagues. I think that, you need to add him. Look, the underlying stats are matching what he's doing. The expected ERA is at 291. The expected batting average at 218. The fastball velocity sitting at 95 miles an hour. The average exit velocity leaves me a little to desire, 89.3 miles an hour, but it's not atrocious. And there's still chance, an ability to improve. Yeah, he's not getting guys to chase as much, but he's still creating a whiff, getting guys to strike out, not really walking guys. Really, really suppressing the barreling and hard contact because guys only barreling right now. I mean, yes, short sample size, but 2.3% of the time, only allowing hard contact 37.8% of the time, producing ground balls, which is key to, alleviate high ERAs at 50% of the time. Now the extension needs some work, but I'm okay with it because of the amount of ground balls he's producing. He's also really, really just seeing success with his split finger. It literally has a batting average of 0.48. His cutter has a batting average of 214. And even his sinker has a batting average of 250 and his slider of 125. And he, gives a pretty even distribution outside of really leaning heavy on the split finger, throwing that 28.4% of the time. The kid looks like he is going to be valuable for at least a short period of time. As for long term, I'm not sure yet. I'm still, holding out and waiting to see. If you look at what he's done in the minors before getting, coming up and doing what he's doing this season, had an inflated ERA of 4.42 through 91 innings. But, sometimes, the minors aren't indicative of how you're actually performing. And, it doesn't say, hey, he's also working on a release. Hey, he's working on, trying to create more movement. And then, okay, cool. It's time to get called up and trying to get paid and show off I need to stay here. Okay. Time to go back to what works, and then we'll work on it on the off season. So Waldrep is somebody that I want to add. I want to see how long this can go for. And leash is not long, but I'm also not going to drop him just because a bad matchup's going to come.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on Waldrep. The thing always has been with him, the stuff is there. You talked about the stuff, and, when the stuff is working and the control is there, Waldrep can pitch like this, what we've seen in his first, 2-3 starts here in the majors. And you know what? It just makes me want to go out there and add him for their start on Wednesday. That's against the White Sox. Really, really nice matchup for Waldrep, 38% owned on Yahoo. And had a little bit of prospect pedigree, when he got drafted and, coming up through, the Brave system, right? Was really stinking it up this year in the minors, as Matt talked about it. But hey, sometimes, you kind of just get up to the majors and, you get the better coaching, you get the teammates, and you just really helps you figure things out. That's what's going on here with Waldrep, it looks like. So add him now. Let's move on to this next guy. He looks like he's figuring it out again, too. It's Jacob Lopez, right, of the Athletics. We've been talking about him a good amount this season, right, because he's had a good run before. It was back the end of May, June. He was having those big strikeout games, and we were telling you to add him, and then he started to get rocked a little bit. And you know what? Understandably, he got dropped a good amount. But, you look back to, July 26th, had a decent start against Houston, built off that against the Diamondbacks on August 1st. But his last two starts have been outstanding for Jacob Lopez. On August 7th, he went up against the Nationals, pitched 7.2 innings, got the win, 10 strikeouts, no earned runs, 0.39 whip. And then in his last one against Tampa, went 7 innings, got the win, 9 strikeouts, no earned runs, 0.57 whip in that one. He gets Minnesota on Tuesday, and that Minnesota team is depleted right now. They sold at the trade deadline. So I think that's a nice juicy matchup for Lopez. And then on the year, numbers are starting to look really good for Jacob Lopez. 15 starts, 6 wins, 3.30 ERA, 119 whip, 84 innings, and 103 strikeouts. He's only 55% owned on Yahoo. Honestly, should be a lot higher than that. I like what Jacob Lopez has been doing recently. Has good stuff. Adam definitely got some good starts ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he's been serviceable this year. I'm definitely not opposed to doing it as long as he has his eye on the prize. I'm ready to rock, just as Dom said. So great take, Dom, for time. I'm going to move on because I really just feel like you covered a lot of it, and most I could do is be a little redundant. So let's talk about Cade Cavalli, I believe is how you say his name, starting pitcher for the Washington Nationals. Has been good so far. 16 innings through the season so far, 14 Ks, 2.2 ERA, and a 1.29 whip. Whip's a little high, but hey, I think, this is little, young pain that I think will eventually figure itself out. Now, he was a good pitching prospect before getting TJ. I believe in 2023, was supposed to return in June of 2024, but dealt with a lot of dead arms and things like that and wasn't really able to return. And now we're starting to see him get the call this year and starting to show off. Now, before getting the call in 2025, things have been a little topsy-turvy. When he had success, it was, in double A and single A, but it was small sample sizes. When he got to triple A, he really did get loose at 65 innings. He had a 6.09 ERA, but I don't think that's too indicative of, again, what it is, because one, you're working back, and, the last thing to come back is control. And obviously the team saw that he had the ability to, get the call. And I think that that's the key part here. So with Cavalli, if the matchup is right, I will start him. He handled himself really nicely against the Phillies yesterday. Saturday now, when you're listening, went 7 innings, got 5 Ks, got the win, no earned runs, and a 1 whip. Handled the Athletics nice on his first outing with 4 innings and 6 Ks. Kansas City hit him up for a bit, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. So far, it's 2 out of 3 good starts, and I think he's going to pass through the Mets and end up getting at the latter half of the week. So I'm waiting to see what that matchup's going to be and if they roll him out. So, hey, I'm willing to see what's going on and see if we can get a little bit of a boost going into the weekend.
Yeah, Matt, you know what? That Mets lineup is hit or miss, man. There's nights where they go out there and they could score 10 runs easy, and there's some nights where they can't buy a hit. So if Cavalli gets those Mets, that's not a horrible matchup. You mentioned it, that this kid had some prospect pedigree before, getting hurt, having arm issues. Almost reminds me of Waldrip in the sense of, Cavalli has the stuff, big fastball, sits at about 98, gets up there, touches 100, at times. So with the kind of stuff that a guy like Cavalli has when he's performing well, you want to pick him up 9% owned on Yahoo. I just add him to see where it goes, just to see where it goes. Same thing with this next guy, Mick Abel, right? Mick Abel is been moved around a little bit. He is now pitching for those Minnesota Twins. Looks like the call is imminent. The Twins kind of got to go with these young guys and see what they're, what they have for the future. In Mick Abel's last start in the minors, in AAA, he struck out 11 over 6 innings, 2 runs, looked dominant. Has Abel's looked dominant at times this year? The overall numbers in the bigs don't look great for Abel. 6 starts in the bigs, 2 wins, 5.04 ERA, 1.36 whip, 25 innings, 21 strikeouts. But I think if Abel gets another shot, we kind of just want to add him to see where it goes. 7% owned on Yahoo. He's got another guy that has good stuff. Maybe the change of scenery takes a little bit of pressure off Abel, and he'll perform a little bit better.
Yeah. I like Abel as a prospect. He has good stuff. Control is something in it issue, but when he's locked and loaded, like Dom said, he's ready. He really could be a difference maker. I mean, look at how he opened up his career in the bigs and set a record for first appearance, strikeout numbers and things like that. So Mick Abel does have it in him. He is a dog. It's just a matter of being consistent in the bigs and some things that just need to be worked out. And I think that they spent quite a bit to get him in a trade. So I mean, it's time to see what they got and try to figure out what's next year is going to do. So Mick Abel is going to get the call, I think, literally at any moment. So well said. I'm going to just get this last guy in real quick. Victor Vodnik, the closer for the Colorado Rockies. Now, by no means am I saying, hey, we need to really go out there and run out there and go get the closer for the Rockies, a guy that hits at a very hitter-friendly park. And, obviously can get himself in trouble real quick with any mistake. But here's the key part. 4 saves over the last week, which is huge. I want a piece of that. I want a piece of a guy getting save opportunities on a consistent basis, a guy that's able to shut out games and say, hey, I'm able to walk away with a save, and that's the difference maker. So I'm going to add him tentatively, and if he's getting lit up and not walking away with saves by the end of the week, he's going to be dropped just as fast as I added him. But you know what? If he's able to continue this pace and be the guy that's able to hold down the job for the Rockies till the end of the season, I want him on my team.
Yeah, Matt, good take on Vodnik. Not much else to say on, except he's closing for the Rockies at the moment.
8% owned.
Yeah, if you need saves, go out there and snag him. But Matt, unless you got anything else, I'm going to get us out of here.
Go for it.
Guys, thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen today. And for your second listen, go check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And once again, shout out to our everydayers and new listeners for listening to Locked On Fantasy Baseball. So, guys, until next time, see you.
Peace.